Welcome into the latest edition of Greatness Unleashed. Josh Pound, glad to have you with us on this special homecoming edition as we will sit down with both our basketball coaches. For the Raven women, that is Chad Folsom. For the Raven men, that is Ryan Moody. And then we'll wrap up this week's episode with a special guest, Athletic Director and soon-to-be Hall of Famer Charlie Gartenmayer. But before we get to that point, we'll bring in Collin Echols on this week's edition of Raven Rewind.
Pretty loaded week last week, Josh. Unfortunately, even with fall break, we got to see a couple games, but we didn't get to see the bulk of everything that happened on campus. So we'll start off on volleyball. A little bit of an off week for the Ravens. Couple of losses. First at Park on Tuesday, 3-1. Then they come back on Friday against Missouri Valley, 3-1 loss there as well. They're getting down to the nitty-gritty of the regular season, fighting to stay in for the conference tournament following the conclusion of that. Those two losses, how are those going to shake things out?
Well, that's something that we've not seen from them this year, where they've gone 0-2 when playing two conference games in 1 week. So right now, holding on to that number 8 spot, I'd like to say they probably have a two games in hand because right below them in the conference standings is Mount Mercy. But if you're looking and trying to read the tea leaves, unfortunately, a lot of what they've got left on their schedule are teams that are ahead of them. So they're going to have to come out and they're going to have to play some of their best volleyball down the stretch to secure that conference tournament spot, which is going to feel like, a tough thing for them coming off a conference tournament championship a season ago. But as you'll hear a little bit later on in the episode, growing pains would be expected when the turnover they've had this year. But hopefully Coach Hurt can get her team kind of going back on the right track. Nationally ranked Missouri Baptist coming up. William Woods, another great team coming up on the schedule as well. So hopefully they're able to string some stuff together here and kind of lock in that conference tournament spot.
You said young team, but I think regardless of that, they've been really impressive to watch. Certainly exciting for all the home games that we've had this year. Been an exciting schedule. It'll be interesting to see how that shakes out later on this week. Go to the soccer pitch, starting with our two home matches that we had last Wednesday. Doubleheader against Central Methodist. CMU women's soccer not seeing the right side of the scoreboard, a loss 2-1, but against a CMU team that in the conference standings looks really, really good, and they were able to bounce back on Saturday with a win against Culver Stockton, 3-0 final score there.
And it's a I don't want to say a freak goal, but a very, scorers are going to score. And unfortunately for Benedictine, what ended up being the game-winning goal for the women's match comes from one of the best scorers in our conference, and that ends up being what could have been a very successful draw to unfortunately a loss for them. But they're solidly in the conference tournament, sitting at 4 with just a handful of games left to go in the season. So in position right now, as long as something doesn't just kind of dramatically drop off for them over the next 2 weeks to host a conference quarterfinal. So I think they'd probably be a little bit happier if they're a little bit further up in the standings going into the last couple of weeks of the regular season. But to be in a position to host a conference tournament behind 3 nationally ranked programs, you have to feel pretty good going into the last couple of weeks of the season.
Talk about women's soccer being loaded in terms of ranked teams. Men's soccer came away with 2 big wins last week, starting with CMU 4-2, the final score there against the receiving votes team. Then they take to the road against Culver Stockton and get a close one there, 2-1. And that's setting them up really well as they hit the end of the regular season, moving towards that conference tournament. They've clawed their way back into contention to see some postseason action.
They've been on the bubble for probably a month. They will tell you from the start they're not having the success that they thought they'd have this year. But luckily, it's not where you were a month ago. It's where you're going to be in a couple of weeks. And right now, back-to-back wins, a huge win on Wednesday night over Central Methodist. They were the front runner in the conference, one of, I think, 4 or 5 teams ahead of Benedictine in the conference standings that is either receiving votes or ranked. And, of course, Benedictine was one of those earlier on in the season. But with those 2 wins now, they've played themselves into a position to get into the conference tournament, and they're sitting with a 3-point lead. Plus, again, and I think what they drew with Clark, so that'll get interesting to see if that comes down to that. But a 3-point lead for them into the conference standings, and so hopefully they can continue to to win the matches they're supposed to win and then go make some noise in the conference tournament.
Yeah, and that was a big win, like you said, against CMU, going down 1-0 to start relatively early in the match, and then they come back and they answer with 4 straight goals before the final CMU goal with a little less than a minute to play.
And that, it was really a 4-1 game.
Yes.
And if you want to really get technical, it was a 3-1 game because the 4th goal was an own goal for Central Methodist. But they were really kind of came out in that second half and controlled it and looked like a completely different team. So I'm very excited to see them kind of continue to put those pieces together because if this conference has shown anything this year, it's that it's anybody's match on any given night, and getting into the tournament gives you an opportunity.
And then we'll go to our final bit of action from last week. Maybe the craziest bit of action that we got to see, just in terms of how long the game. Football at CMU, final score 52-7, another dominant win for the Ravens. Kickoff was at 1, and that game finished up at 6-something.
It was later.
I think.
Yeah, it was later than that.
Yeah, I mean, just a long day. 3-hour weather delay.
3-hour lightning delay that literally we had run one play in the first quarter, winning 17-7 at the time, and then the first lightning delay hit. So then where you were looking at, okay, it'll be 2:30, 2:40. Then the second lightning delay hit. And then by 4:15, they're like, well, we're just going to figure out what the next course of action is going to be. It was Central Methodist's homecoming. And so that everybody's familiar with how we do things here, Central Methodist has one field. They play football and soccer on it. So they had to make a decision to postpone their soccer games so that we could finish a football game. So luckily they were able to do that for them. And then when the dust settled, 49 unanswered points from Benedictine with 453 yards on the ground. And so a very successful night, and then more history made for the program as well. I think the last time we had a show, we talked about a record being broken, and now another record being broken as Christian Kloeb connected on a 55-yard field goal to break the previous record of 54 yards that had stood since 1978. I'm the only one on the BRSN staff that was alive when that record was set.
It's crazy to think, too, though, that 55 yards today is like, that's not like the super long field goal anymore. That's turning into like the regular 50-plus yarder.
And so Christian took over as our primary kickoff specialist at the end of last year in the playoffs because of an unfortunate injury to a kicker we had. But I had the fortune of watching him kick in the JV games, and I knew going into this season, I watched him kick a 65-plus yarder that missed wide right in a JV game last year. So I knew he had a long leg in him.
You knew he was legit.
And in the conditions that, luckily that happened before the field got too terribly slick. But at that point I was listening to it on the radio, and it sounded like he had more than enough leg on that. So very exciting for him to be able to break that record and etch his name in the record books.
Pretty good year for football so far. They'll look to continue the winning this weekend against William Woods. And before we wrap up the football piece, if you saw it on Instagram, shout out to the moms who kept the football team fed during that 3-hour delay.
Well, and that's, I think, probably something that gets lost. We have had a very lengthy delay here on campus before in a game. A few years ago when we had kickoff was supposed to happen at 11 o'clock. When we had a featured game on TV in the Kansas City market, and unfortunately that day it was another lengthy delay. We thought we had plenty of room before we had to get down to the other end of campus for soccer that night, and it ended up being like a normal day. We did not start playing again until about 1 o'clock, and so for them to be able to step up and help out in that way, there's no amount of prep that can help a 3+ hour delay.
No.
Unfortunately. For Benedictine, at least, it turned out to be a very good afternoon and good evening for the program.
Solid week overall last week. It's going to be a good one and a busy Friday and Saturday on campus for homecoming this week. And I'll let you touch on that when you look forward into the future.
So thanks, Colin, for taking us through this latest edition of the Raven Rewind. Coming up after the break, we'll get to our first segment of this week's edition of Greatness Unleashed.
Go tear this life apart, go find out where it starts, and do it all again. You'll find where it all begins. If you want to leave your mark, you gotta be the spark. Under the surface is the purpose you've been searching for. Open up the here and now. Cast away your fear and doubt. Push and make it work. Get what you deserve. Turn the volume up and live out loud. Open up the here and now. Cast away your fear and doubt. Push and make it work. Get what you deserve. Turn the volume up and live out loud. Laugh until it hurts. Dance until it works. Love until you learn to live out loud.
Welcome back to the latest edition of Greatness Unleashed. Josh Pound, now happy to be joined by women's basketball coach Chad Folsom. And Coach, believe it or not, we are, as we're recording this, about just over a week away from the season opener. So for those of us that have been around, you guys have been on the hardwood, been practicing for about a month now, but it's got to be a pretty exciting time for you and your coaching staff and the players, as it's finally, all that hard work in the off season is finally going to get a chance to be shown as you get out on the court in a week.
Yep, we're super excited. Yeah, like you said, our opener is next Tuesday at home. Kansas Christian College coming to town. So yeah, we've been at it 3-4 weeks now with practice and putting a lot of things in, and the team's been progressing nicely. What's great is we had a scrimmage this past weekend, so against some other teams, so we're able to see what we're doing and what we look like against someone else, which was good to see. So, and I thought we played pretty well. So we're kind of excited about getting things going next week. We got a week right now to kind of fix things that from the scrimmage and get ourselves ready for game start next week.
And it's not a complete reset, because you do have a lot of familiar faces back that did play some substantial minutes for you last year, but it's probably maybe, is this as close of a reset for you in your time at Benedictine to there's going to be a lot of new people that are going to be contributing for your team this year?
Yeah, for sure. That last year was the first time. I mean, we have graduated 6, but we have 5 starters that were all seniors. So we have never really had that in the past. So yeah, we have everybody stepping into new roles this year. We don't return a starter, so everybody's stepping into new roles. Like you said, we have a lot of players that have been part of things last year and factored in quite a bit, so we're expecting them to really step up into leadership roles and taking on more scoring and doing things like that. And we've added some new pieces to the puzzle as well. So I feel like we've got a good blend. We've got 9 returning players and 6 new players in the mix, and things, like I said, have been progressing well, and we're excited for what's to come.
So how much of that last month has been a balance of giving those new players an opportunity to kind of they don't know what they don't know. They've never been through this, and how much of that has been trying to encourage the returners that are stepping into new roles? Kind of how have you balanced that over the last month?
I would say we've probably, Coach Connolly, myself, our staff has been doing a lot more. We always teach and we always focus on the details, and doing the little things right. But I feel like it's been a real emphasis, with our squad, that we really do the little things correctly. On defense, being in the right positions, and how we force it, and all the things, where our hands are, just all those details, and offensively as well. How we're reading screens and coming off screens and looking inside and doing all those things. So I feel like it's been a lot of instruction. This maybe more so perhaps than if you had a veteran squad,
right.
But we're always about instruction, so that's not different. But what's been great is I feel like all the players, new players, returners, are all picking things up really quickly this year. And our returning players have been doing a great job being examples, of how we do things and how we, what we do and how we go about it. So they've been great at being examples, as well as helping the younger players pick things up. But I feel like we've really progressed pretty quickly through these last 3-4 weeks, and it showed in the scrimmage, and like you said, we didn't know as far as our players and everybody, what we're going to be and who we're going to be, because we've just been practicing with ourselves. So
right.
When you finally see it on against somebody else and see, hey, we're looking pretty good, and we're doing the things we've been doing in practice in a game, and it's transferring into success, then I think our whole team really had a good weekend this weekend to really see where we are and where we can go, and I think everybody's excited about this season.
Well, so much of the focus obviously is on you developing who you guys are going to be, and what that looks like in late October is not what it's going to look like in February as you progress through the season. But progressing through that season is going to look a little different this year as far as the conference schedule and the way that it shapes up with this kind of pod system that's been established, where you definitely have a home and home with some of the traditional teams that you've played in the past, but then only a double round robin against 5 other teams, and then just a single game against what I think they're calling the Iowa-Nebraska pod or something like that. But just talk about how that kind of played into what the non-conference schedule, and that's going to be a very tough schedule for you guys this year as well, and how you kind of had to balance getting some games on there to kind of build some confidence, but also you've spent time on the national rating committee and things like that, so you've seen what it's going to take to continue to compete for a national tournament position and stuff like that. Just talk about kind of how that balance goes with knowing you got this many conference games now and then being able to fill in around that.
Right. So last year we played everybody twice, so we had 24 conference games and we had 4 non-conference. So we didn't have that many to fill. And 2 of those for us were in Hawaii, so those were already filled. So we really only had 2 games to locate last year. And this year we were playing 20 games in conference, and we'll have 8 non-conference games. So we had to go out and find more teams to play. And I think, starting with our conference, it is going to be different this year because we've added 2 teams, Missouri Baptist and William Woods. So now we've got 15 teams, and like you said, we'll play those that are around us, Baker, Mid-America, Peru State Park twice because they're in our pod. But then outside of that, we only see 2 of them twice, which is Mount Mercy this year and Culver Stockton. Otherwise, we only play everybody else once, in the league. So that's, another, 8 teams out there that we only see one time. And sometimes it's at home, sometimes it's on the road. So it varies for the whole league that way, so no one's really playing a similar schedule. It's going to be kind of different this year. But like you said, playing good, solid non-conference is always what we've been about, and going out and playing good teams on the, out of league. And this year we're having 8 games. We had more opportunities to do that. So I think, we've got, our opening game here with Kansas Christian College, and then we go on the road that weekend to play at Tabor and play Tabor and Bethany, 2 KCAC schools we haven't played in quite a while. And then we get to host a classic, which we've always done, and it'll be nice this year. We are bringing in a team that was in the Final Four last year, Briarcliff, so good talent, good team right off the bat there in our own classic. Southwest Christian's the other team coming up from the Sooner Athletic Conference, and what's cool about that one is their head coach was our GA a few years ago, Andy McGill, and she's now married, but she's going to be the head coach for that one. It'll be fun to have her back on campus. Then we get into conference. It's nice though. We've another non-conference game is St. Mary's, which we've started the last couple years in Leavenworth, and so we're on the road there this year. But it's nice that that's a close game. I always think, and the coaches always talk about hey, we play a 7:00 game, but we're still home before the news starts. So it's a nice trip. It was an easy trip, and they're usually a good squad in the KCAC, so that'll be a good test for us. And then we're back into conference again, and then right before Christmas break, we've picked up 2 more non-conference games, and those are going to be big challenges for us. So we're bringing in Northwestern Iowa, who again was a national tournament team out of the GPAC. And then on that Saturday, the 20th of December, we're bringing in Dordt University, and Dordt is the 2-time NAIA defending champions. So that's going to be a big-time test. But, I like the way we set the schedule so we're not playing them next week.
Right.
We're going to have a time to get some games under our belt and see where we're at, and it'll be a great test for us. So I feel like going out and playing great teams like that helps us for our conference because our conference is very competitive and very strong. So getting to play those teams out of league is definitely, will help us, I think, in the long run.
You talked about conference expansion. Missouri Baptist, William Woods, former AMC teams now going to compete full-time in the Heart of America Athletic Conference. As as the schedules have kind of changed and the conference landscape's changed a little bit, we've gotten bigger, but so has the KCAC, so has the GPAC. How has that kind of, changed when because you talk about trying to find schools that are somewhat close when you're playing some of these games, so it reduces travel. Mm-hmm. How has that dynamic changed how you have to look at who you potentially can play in the non-conference?
Right. It helps to play, and now the NAIA set up ARCs, which is essentially 4 conferences all combined into a Midwest arc or into a South arc or West arc, whatever. And there's 5 arcs with 4 conferences in each. So for us, that's the AMC, that's the KCAC, and that's the GPAC, the leagues you just mentioned. So playing those teams within our arc is always a good thing, because then you can see where you stand when they do arc ratings, and if you've played some of these teams before, it kind of helps that way. So we look more regionally, who we're going to play, and those are the three leagues around us. So we kind of are looking to play teams, in that area.
So we'll kind of just switch gears a little bit. one of the things we like to talk about when we have coaches come in is like, what got them into coaching and who they lean on as mentors or things like that. Hometown kid, you go off to Grinnell to compete collegiately, and then in a roundabout way, a few years later after that, obviously there's a time in there, but you end up coming back home to coach Benedictine women's basketball. Just when did you know coaching was something that you wanted to do, and then just kind of take us through what brought you back to Atchison to lead the program.
Yep. So I graduated from Moore Hill Prep here in Atchison. Played basketball, ran track, went on to Grinnell College, was able to do both, which was awesome for 4 years. Graduated from there with a psychology degree, and I was thinking maybe get into sports psychology. I wasn't really even thinking about coaching coming out of college, but I went out to the University of Utah, got my master's degree out there, and at the time, there was great basketball going on in Salt Lake City. I mean, the University of Utah, Rick Majerus was the coach. They had 3 NBA guys playing for him at the time, became NBA guys, and they were in the Final Four with Kentucky. So they had a really strong program. I was working all their camps, playing pickup with these guys, mainly passing and screening. But, and then even some of the Jazz guys, Utah Jazz guys were coming over. That was Stockton Malone time period, and they were playing the Bulls in the finals every year I was there. So it was great basketball, and I actually got involved with a guy named Coach John Wyndham, who worked the camps, was a high school head coach in Salt Lake City, and he asked me to be his assistant. So as I was finishing my master's degree, I got to be an assistant boys JV coach or high school coach, and that's where I started really missing it. I was missing the playing and being around it, and of course being around it at the University of Utah and learning from Rick Majerus was awesome because he's a great coach. So that's where I got started back into coaching, and so I graduated my master's and then got my first job coaching at a junior college in Colorado. So I was a men's assistant coach for 1 year at Lamar Community College, and then became the head coach for the next 3. In that time period, I got married, and we had our first child, and perspective shift a little bit, and getting close to family was important, and so we were able to come back. This job opened up here at Benedictine College. It was a switch, of course, from coaching men to coaching women. Took some adjusting on that side of it, but the rest is history. Here we are for going on 25 years now, and we've had a lot of success. And I feel like it's been a great experience being here at Benedictine, and we've been able to have a lot of success while we're here, and my family and I are really, really happy that we're here in Atchison.
So you were fortunate enough to make that transition from coaching men to coaching women in the timetable that you were. Looking back at it now, if you were to try to make that transition within the last 4 or 5 years, do you think it would be as easy as it was for you, or maybe would it be a little bit more difficult to switch just because of the nature of where we're at with athletics?
Well, if you're referring to the transfer portal and all that,
well,
probably,
not necessarily just that, but just
but
the difference
I
in
think,
coaching men and women.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I wouldn't say our first few years here were smooth. You know what I mean? I mean, we was having to learn differences in that style, and I hear from our alums back there, you're like, you used to run us. I'm like, did I? I mean, we've changed a lot, and we've grown a lot through the years, and probably I found out some things that worked with guys don't work with ladies, but I think the number one thing that I think has helped is that coaching women is more about creating a family atmosphere and creating a community and creating a team that cares about each other. I'm not saying men's teams don't care about each other, but they can function if they don't like each other, and they don't necessarily find that with women's teams. But I think that we've built a great culture over the years here, and I feel like it's all been built around, of course, Benedictine's a great community and a great school, but the people we recruit, we're looking for great people, and we're recruiting good people at the junior college as well, but that's been, I think, the key is that you surround yourself with great people, you can't help but succeed, and I think our team's got a bunch of great young ladies on it, and we've always had that, and building a chemistry and a culture and a family atmosphere has always been part of who we are, and I feel like that's always been a big key for the reason we've had a lot of success over the years.
Now, how much of that, as we kind of wrap things up, how much of that, the way that you've modeled your program is things that you've taken? You mentioned Rick Majerus was one of the guys that you kind of took some things from, but like if you had to pinpoint 2 or 3 kind of mentors or peers over the years that you've been able to pull things from that you've kind of and made it your own, who would those guys be?
Well, like you said, Rick Majerus, being around that program for 3 years while I was there, he was, just a tactician for X's and O's, but also really a stickler for details. And I would say that's what we are too. You know, we definitely pay attention to doing little things right, details, footwork, all the little parts I feel like make a big difference in whether you're going to be a good team or a great team. So we really focus there. I mean, the coach I mentioned earlier, Coach Wyndham, that I got to coach with in high school, we still run the half-court trap he showed me. You know, I mean, it's worked, and it's something that, you know, we've taken with us. And I talk to him still regularly, and he's back in the Kansas City area, which has been nice to have him around. But, you know, those guys have shaped me, you know, early on, and then you just keep growing. You know, you're never stop learning, you know, things. So we're always watching videos of this and that and trying to incorporate things from this and that. And I mean, our offense hasn't been the same for 25 years.
Right.
You know, we adjusted based on who we have and what we can do well. And so, you know, I feel like we've constantly been changing, evolving, trying to improve, trying to do things better, try to be better than we were the last year, and just keep growing. So.
Well, thanks for taking the time today, Coach. Good luck as you get ready to get into the season this year. It'll be exciting to sit right next to you, not on the bench, but pretty close to you, and see how the team develops this year. So coming up after the break, we will sit down with Ryan Moody as we continue the basketball theme here on this week's edition of Greatness Unleashed.
Welcome to the Heart of America Athletic Conference, where innovation meets tradition. Here, growth is not just measured in victories, but in the development of character and sportsmanship. Our student athletes compete at a championship level, pushing their limits every day. The Heart is committed to an uncommon student athlete experience that features some of the premier athletic programs in the NAIA. Our commitment to excellence goes beyond athletics, establishing a community of support and mentorship. But what truly sets us apart is the heart with which we play. Join us and experience the passion, the drive, and the spirit of champions. That passion and commitment extends off the playing field and into graduation. The Heart of America Athletic Conference, champions in competition, leaders in life.
Welcome back to the latest edition of Greatness Unleashed as we continue our basketball theme here as basketball season is right around the corner. And on that note, we'll bring in men's basketball coach Ryan Moody. And Coach, you know, you guys have been at it for about a month now, but games are just, days away. That's got to feel pretty good to finally get to that point after a long off season.
Yeah, we're excited to play. We've had a couple of scrimmages. First of all, thanks for having me on. This is new and exciting for me. Games can officially start for the NAI this Thursday, October 23rd. Our official home opener isn't until October 30th against Haskell. So it's been about a month, I think we're going on now, of official practice and then some preseason conditioning. And, you know, we got a chance to scrimmage at junior college. We got a chance on Friday night to scrimmage another 4-year and just a chance to play somebody else. I like where we're at. You know, I mean, we're fairly healthy for beating up on each other for the last month. But injuries are going to happen all the time, and we've had a couple, and we're grinding through some things. But the guys had a great summer. We did get a chance to get together quite a few times this summer, play some games, have some practices. They've been fantastic in the weight room since the season ended last year. So all in all, I feel like we're in a really good spot leading up to this year.
You've got a good core of guys coming back. Obviously, that has to make you feel pretty good. But at the same time, that also maybe doesn't afford you the opportunity to maybe bring in a whole lot of fresh faces because of the scholarship numbers that you've got. Just talk about, trying to balance that as you try to figure out, how many new guys can I bring in versus, okay, I've got a good core. We just have to get that good core ready to go.
Yeah, and it's even a little different, Josh. I mean, we brought 13 returners back, which is probably unheard of in 2025 in college basketball. But we're very thankful because we love all of them. They're extremely talented. They're a little bit older than they've been, because we've been kind of grinding through some youngness, some inexperience, and now we have a bunch of third, fourth, and even a fifth-year guy on this roster. So. But the weird part is we're only going to lose 2 in May if everything stays the same, Right. So recruiting-wise was kind of a trick, So we brought in 2 transfers. Aiden Sullivan, a 6'8", 230-pound transfer from Wayne State, a young man we recruited out of high school out of Olathe Northwest. Caleb Moss, 6'7", 210, 215, was a kind of an interesting story with Caleb. He played at VMI back during COVID, Virginia Military Institute, and then joined the seminary for 3 years and then left the seminary and is now a 25-year-old with 4 years to play. Unfortunately, he's been a little banged up and hasn't had a chance to practice a whole lot, but he'll help us down the road. So then we brought in a couple freshmen that are going to develop and give us some depth as we go. But those 13 returners, we're really excited. I mean, we bring back 4 starters. We bring back several guys that are in that next tier that could be starters.
Right.
So I feel like our depth is really high this year. They're all just a bit stronger and a bit faster, a lot more experience. You can sense it in practice. You can sense it in the way they carry themselves. So it's been fun putting this together. We're doing some different stuff, both on offense and defense, which is exciting for the staff and for the players because it's not the same old.
Right.
And I think that it fits our personnel. So, as far as the group and the returners, and then you add in those new guys, depth is a big advantage for us this year. As long as we stay healthy, I think we've got 10, 12. I mean, you could say 17 deep with this group, but it won't be that way. We know that, right? But I love where we're at. We're protected against injury quite a bit if we do have some guys go down. And I just love where our experience level is at. Grinding through the last couple of years has been difficult for all of us, where we're used to being at a really high level, competing, to be at the top 3 of that league, and then having to kind of grind through growing pains and growing up pains, I like to say. And we've kind of fought through that. Doesn't necessarily mean this year's going to be fantastic, but I love where we're at right now.
So how, and you touched on it, last couple of years not been up to the expectations that you've established with the program, but you've still got that core of guys that lived that. What have you been kind of, is it anything you guys as a coaching staff have to, talk to them about, or is it just kind of one of those things where it's like, they know they went through it, they've experienced it, where you rely on them to then kind of like, hey, we can't let this happen. Like, we've got to turn that corner. Or is it, just one of those things where a lot of close games, it one way or the other things happen. But like, how do you get them over that hump this year?
I think it's both. I mean, I think it's the staff. I think it's the players. I think it's a mentality thing. I think that you're not okay with what's happened. Last year, whatever it may be. You look at stats. Where do we have to get better? I mean, clearly we've identified that we did not rebound the ball well enough. And clearly we've identified that we turned it over too much. Both of those are common in young teams,
right?
But it's not okay to just let it just figure itself out, right? Like, you got to work on that. You got to have a mentality as a team. The one thing I can say about this group that I don't think we'll ever have to worry about is their hunger to win and their hunger to get better. I mean, they are ready to take a next step. They understand the things that they have to do to get better. We're led by Preston Reynolds, his 5th year. We're led by Bryson LaRue in his 4th year. Jack Vanderwoody's in his 4th year. Bensei Duca's in his 4th year. I think Noah Simmons is now in his 4th year of college basketball. And we've got these guys that bring a lot of experience and maturity and just old, right? I mean, like, they understand college basketball. And then you have this group right behind them in 3rd year guys, Jared Lee, Larry Parker III. I'm probably going to miss a couple, and I don't mean to, but what I guess where I'm going with this is, like, I think it's a taste of both. I mean, the staff has to instill the things that we have to get better at, but the players have to have the mentality that they're gonna work on those things. They're gonna take them to heart. They're gonna do the things that they have to do to put themselves in a place to win. So far, so good. I mean, I really like where we're at. They compete every day. That's one of our biggest things, is like iron sharpens iron, right? Like, we want to have the most competitive practices that we can every single day, and that makes us better when it gets to game day. And then stacking great days on top of each other. We really haven't had a bad day. I mean, like, have we had all great days, A grade late days? I don't know about that, but we haven't had a bad one. And that's the sign of a mature team. That's the sign of a hungry team. So, we still got a couple weeks before we play, or 8 or 9 practices, and then it's on. But I like where this group is at.
Well, the conference is going to look a little bit different this year for you guys, not just because we've added teams like Missouri Baptist and William Woods to the mix, but because the scheduling looks a little bit different for you this year with the pods and the way that they set that up, which then also opens the road to more non-conference games. Just talk about what the differences are going to look like for folks that are familiar with the Heart of America Conference, but maybe not, haven't paid as much of attention in the offseason to know what the conference schedule is going to look like this year.
I mean, just think how much the Heart has changed since I've been the head coach at Benedictine. I mean, like, we've added all those teams in Iowa. Now we've added William Woods and Mobap. I mean, we're at 15 total teams. We went to a pod schedule, and to be honest with you, it's too complicated to do on a podcast. But the reality is, we're going to play certain teams twice, and we're going to play certain teams once, whether it's on the road or at home. So it's what's called an unbalanced schedule. You don't get to play everybody the same. So it's, I don't know if you call it luck of the draw or just how it works out with the scheduling gods and how they put it together. it's going to be interesting. I mean, as far as the heart. And what it did is we shrunk the number of games played in our league to 20. So we have 8 non-league games this year, which in the past, like last year, I think we had 4.
Right.
So it doubled the amount of non-league games. And, when you talk about getting to the national tournament and ultimate goals and things like that, the main thing is you got to win. Clearly, you want to finish in the top 3 to 4 to 5 of your league, but non-con can help, and it can help your RPI, it can help your strength of schedule, it can help your, I like to say, street cred across the nation of like beating teams within your arc that are good. So we set up ours, I think with some really challenging games. I mean, we're playing St. Mary's went to the national tournament out of Leavenworth last year. We're playing Southwestern, who went to the national tournament last year. We're playing Dort, who was a top 10 team, went to the national tournament last year. And then we sprinkle in a couple other games in that group. We're playing Columbia, who was a national tournament team last year. I feel like the challenge is there for this team, for the reasons we stated earlier.
Right.
I think this team's prepared for that. And I think that non-con schedule will get us ready. The heart will be as challenging as ever. It's crazy. I mean, our preseason poll should probably come out today. Everybody's new. We're about, us and I think Mount Mercy are the only 2 teams that really returned a huge core of their roster from last year. And that's a sign of the times in
Right.
2025. People are hitting the quote unquote portal, whether it's JUCO guys, 4-year guys, freshmen and high school guys aren't as prevalent anymore. So we don't really know what we're walking into when it comes to the league, but I think we'll be prepared when we get to that point.
With the amount of non-conference games that you've been able to schedule this year, how did you balance what you talked about, finding teams that do give you some credibility outside of the conference, but then also potentially, I mean, let's be honest, finding some games that are going to build confidence for your program?
Yeah, I mean, there's you for sure try to schedule some 50-50s, and then you for sure try to schedule some competition. And I don't know if there's a game on our roster that's necessarily a done deal either way. I think they're all going to be challenged. They're all college athletes. They're all coached. What we try to do more than that is just kind of home versus away,
right.
Neutral, ARC games, which in our world is region.
Right.
We have a region, which is the KCAC, the Heart, the AMC, and now the GPAC is in our ARC as well. So we tried to schedule tough in-ARC games. That's St. Mary's, that's Dort, that's your Southwestern. Those are going to be tough, Columbia, tough, difficult in-ARC games. And what that does is if you can go out there and compete well, win, lose close on the road, whatever it may be, that builds your in-ARC credibility. And I think this team is set up for that. I really do. I mean, I think if we can, we can defend well, we our offense is a little different, we get the right guys shots. I think in the end, this schedule is built to kind of help us move into the league and even move into those conversations as we move forward with RPI and things like that.
So we'll kind of shift gears here now. We've talked about the current team, but I've got the opportunity to see you kind of progress as a coach, knowing you're a fellow alum, and how much has that helped you in recruiting guys to this campus to be able to literally say, I've walked in your shoes?
Yeah, that's a good question. Coach Pierre, my assistant's been here longer than me. This will be my 15th year. I think it's his 20th, if you count his GA and being an assistant and those kind of things before me. I think it really matters, credibility with the players that we recruit, credibility with their parents when we sit down. I mean, Benedictine College sells itself when you're on campus. I mean, if you walk around this campus, it has changed so much since the 1990s when I was here. It's almost not even a version of itself that you remember. But the education, the community, the hospitality, the faith, I mean, all of these things that go into like what we are built around fits right in line with our program and the kids we recruit. I mean, we're trying to get high character kids that care about school,
right.
Highly academically driven, that are talented and super tough. I mean, that's the equation. Those are the 4 things we're trying to get. When you recruit those guys to Benedictine College, you get them on campus and they see this campus and they see the growth and the development, the care in the athletic facilities, how nice they are, how we treat our athletes. It is a good sell. But having me being able to stand there and sit there with those guys and Coach Pierre as well and discuss like, hey, we're all grads. Coach Rieschel, our part-time guy, he's got a degree from here. All 3 of us have a degree from this college. I think that matters.
So finally, as we kind of wrap things up here with you, one of the things we also like to talk about is, you played basketball here at Benedictine. When did you know that, coaching was going to kind of be where you made your living and then now you've been at Benedictine for 15 seasons or whatever. But just talk a little bit about how coaching became how you're going to make a living.
It's a great question. I went to school. I was going to be a business major and flunked accounting, so that didn't go very well. And then I went to the biology track and considered being a doctor, or even at one point I wanted to be a wildlife biologist and chase bears. My 5th year in college, I was on the 5-year plan. I just really didn't want to give up the game, and that's when it kind of clicked for me. I was a student assistant my 5th year here. I got an opportunity at the University of Nebraska Omaha to be a volunteer, and then eventually a GA, and then eventually a full-time guy over my time there, and it just kind of seamlessly worked into coaching. As I've grown older, the impact that we have on these young men and their families, and watching the things that they go through and that their families go through, and for us to be a part of that, a positive part of that, is more rewarding than anything else that we do at this point. I mean, I'm so proud of our graduates that we've kicked out the last 14 years that have graduated from here, and the guys that I played with, and the guys in the 80s and the guys in the 70s that still come back and fund our program and support our program. Being a part of Benedictine men's basketball is a family, and we have always been that way. I don't think it'll ever change. It's not because of any one person that's in the program now. We've been playing basketball for over 124 years at Benedictine College, and I'm blessed and thankful to have that, and to be a coach at Benedictine, and have found that as my calling, and I'm excited about year 15 with this group.
All right. Thanks, Coach, for taking the time to come visit with us this afternoon. Good luck as you get ready for the rest of this season. Coming up after the break, we'll sit down with a special guest to wrap up this homecoming edition of Greatness Unleashed. Welcome back to the final segment on this week's edition of Greatness Unleashed. Josh Pound, and I'll be happy to be joined by Charlie Gartenmayer, Athletic Director, and soon to be official Raven Hall of Famer. And so, before we even talk about that, though, Charlie, we wanted to bring you on this week, because it's kind of we're beyond the midpoint of the conference season, or the fall sports schedule, but just to kind of talk about the state of Raven athletics in general, and just kind of go from there. So, obviously, football's having a very successful season under Coach Osborne. Soccer teams are starting to kind of come into their own. Volleyball, young, kind of, and you're right there cheering with, and one of our best fans when it comes to cheering on the volleyball team. But just kind of in general, like, we went the walkthrough on Thursday of our new indoor facility for baseball and softball. So a lot of things happening maybe that people don't necessarily see if they're not on campus every day. Just talk about the great things we've got going on right now at Benedictine.
Well, thanks for inviting me here, and I want to compliment Josh on this Unleashed Greatness, Greatness Unleashed, and I've heard a lot of positive things from a lot of people about it, so keep up the good work, you and your staff. But, there are a lot of things that go on within Raven Athletics that are not recognized or seen outside. Behind the scenes, we've got a great athletic training staff headed by Patrick Hodap. We also have a great sports performance department headed by Zach Rulins. And these two staffs are working together to provide high quality for our student athletes on the field, knowing that they can go to them for rehab or how to get better with their flexibility, with their strength, whatever. I think also the fact of what you and your staff are doing with publicizing. I hope everyone has an opportunity to take a look at what we're doing streaming-wise. It's the best in the conference, maybe the best in the NAI, but it's really done well, and we hear a lot of positive comments about that, and our viewership is extremely, extremely high. So I'm excited about that, so that grandmom or aunt and uncle in California or cousin can see that in Maine, and it can be seen in all 50 states. And in fact, I know for a fact that there are 3 of our former players who are watching it over in Sweden. So we're really excited about that. But the state of athletics, we're at a really high point. President Minnis and I talk almost daily. He always asks me, okay, what's next? And I've given him so many what's next, he's backed off from me a little bit of asking what's next. But just recently, if you've come to a home football game, we've been in a situation where we put a new track, an 8-lane track around our football stadium. You already mentioned about the indoor facility, and we feel that that's going to be an important component in helping our softball and baseball teams to develop. With regard to volleyball, we've got an outstanding coach, an assistant coach. They're young, as you mentioned, and I kind of think of it like the Kansas City Chiefs. Everybody thinks that they're going to win all their games just by the flip of a wrist of Patrick Mahomes. Well, coming off of a conference championship, a national playoff berth in volleyball, there's a lot of young kids there, but that's a solid team that Victoria is building for not only now, but she's also coaching for the next 2 years. So that's really important. My gosh, what we're doing with Jacob Keneally and the director of cross country and track and field is just amazing. The type of kids that he's recruiting in here, they're kind of like hanging in the background there a little bit, and when the conference championship comes, I expect that we're going to win another conference championship in cross country on both sides. So, and then, now we're getting, I would say, maybe 3 weeks, and then we're going to be in a crossover scenario where we're going to have fall sports and winter sports, and that's exciting as well. So, and then Joel's doing a great job with football, and I will tell you, during this process, these coaches they're coaching their kids, they're helping them with their spiritual development, they're helping them with their academic development. Along with that, they're trying to figure out the other team, watching film and so on, but they're fundraising and they're recruiting. And so I can't say enough about how our head coaches are really leading the charge here with Raven Athletics.
Well, you touched on it that, you and President Minnis talk daily, and there's maybe a lot of people that don't realize that, there's a cabinet on campus that kind of helps steer the direction of how things go internally. You're fortunate enough to be on that cabinet and be able to meet with the president as frequently you do, and that's not necessarily the case on some campuses our size like this. How much has the relationship that you've been able to build with President Minnis over your time as the athletic director, how much of that has been a benefit to us as an athletic department?
Oh, it's a great benefit. And the reason I feel that is because I look at, my responsibility is athletics, but I also know that I have to look at the entire campus and the entire organization. I'm not going to be selfish and just want from athletics.
Right.
We have 2,250 full-time undergraduate students, and our total enrollment is 2,600, over 2,600. So we've got to take a look at what is important now. You know, we talk about what's important now, but also what we have to do. And Jim Farrell, Farrell Academic Center, Farrell Gas, he told us several years back, okay, people coming to Benedictine College and leading Benedictine College made decisions for up to 150 years. Now, you're in the role that you're at now. What are the decisions that you're making for the next 150 years? And we take that pretty seriously and reflect upon that. But our relationship is really good. President Minnis is involved at the NAI level. President Minnis is involved with the Heart in the leadership role. He wants to know what's going on. He will ask if a kid is injured. Hey, tell me how so-and-so is doing. Hey, I want you to be aware that this kid's going to be on campus to recruit him. Make sure that you spend some time with the kid and so on. But what we're trying to do is just let everybody know how special this place is, right. And it's really hard to help people understand that unless they come here. We always, one of our values here at Benedictine College is hospitality, and the value of hospitality, St. Benedict says, well, treat every person that you come in contact with as if they were Jesus Christ. And so when President Minnis gives a talk or I give a talk, I always say, hey, to business people, hey, if you ran your organization that way, you'd probably be pretty successful. So we think we're pretty successful by that fashion, and we hope that people who visit our campus feel that same way.
It's obviously a special week on campus, homecoming weekend coming up with all the different activities that come up involved with that. And part of that is the Athletic Hall of Fame induction, and you're fortunate enough to be one of the inductees this year along with Coach Pops. And just talk about, I know that's a reluctant thing for you to go into the Hall of Fame, but just talk about what it means to be able to go with George.
Yeah, and so so for the fans out there, I was not be able to attend the meeting, so I sent Josh Pound and Michael Fawcett to the meeting. I told them, now do not let them induct me into the Hall of Fame, and I got a note from the president. In fact, he and I were visiting a donor, and he said, hey, I'm going to tell you something. You're going to go into the Hall of Fame. But it's a real honor. I had an opportunity writing some thoughts down, and I saw several people who have gone into the Hall of Fame, people that I've had an opportunity to meet and get to know in my 50-plus years here. And so I'm really excited. I'm really excited for the Papa Giorgio family and for that we recognize George. I just think it's a special weekend. It's going to be a difficult weekend for Michelle, George's wife, and his 4 daughters. And so we're going to make it, try to do the best I can and make it a celebration for the whole weekend. So, but yeah, it's a great honor. The things that Benedictine College has done for me and my family are just amazing. In many, many ways, I continue to strengthen my faith. In many ways, my love for learning is enhanced. And I'm going to see some great friends that are coming back and family that we don't spend enough time with. And so that's really important. And it kind of, quite frankly, not to get too serious here, but with the situation of George's passing, it reminds me that I need to spend more time with the people that I love.
Well, I mean, that's always a good thing to do, and obviously, you've had to balance that as over the years, being a full-time football coach, at a grade school, elementary principal, and kind of balancing all that. But let's just take a step back. The 18-year-old Charlie steps on campus back in the 70s. Did you ever imagine that in 2025 this is where you'd be?
Oh, no. When I stepped on here, I was 17, so I wasn't even of the drinking age. So, no, I will tell you that I've thought about that a lot. I've thought about that, and coming from Philadelphia, I think most of the people know this, that I wanted to go to Villanova University in the worst way. got accepted there, and I went to my mom and dad, and they said, we can't afford that. That's $5,000. Okay, that's 1971. So I was going to go to East Stroudsburg State College and then my counselor, Father Joe Schmidt, called, and he said, I told my mom, hey, I know he's going to go to East Stroudsburg. I think he wants to know he wants to be a teacher, but he's not happy. I don't see it in his eye. So Father Joe said, we're going to take you over to the girls' school, and there's a college night. I went to Archbishop Wood boys and Archbishop Wood girls, about 3,000 in each school. So, but we then went through there, or walking through there, and we saw these different schools, and I just picked this thing up, and it said St. Benedict's College, and just one thing led to another, and I really believe it's the Holy Spirit that guided me here, and has put a really mark in my heart that I always thought, oh, I'm going to go back to Philadelphia. Now I would have to be drug out of here. So, but yeah, I don't think I knew what the future held for me. I pray a lot, so I just kind of let the good Lord show His plan to me and just roll from there. So.
Well, and then, a lot of the people that have followed, that you're going to see this weekend that are coming back to celebrate and everything. For those that maybe don't know, athletic director at the collegiate level, that's the second career.
Yeah.
You were in grade school education, and then also was an assistant football coach here for many, many years. Just talk about what that transition was like to deal with. I always joke with my family that college kids are grown up grade schoolers anyway.
Yeah, kindergarten.
But just talk about, what the kind of decision had to go in. Obviously, you were set to retire, and still continue to coach football. And then all of a sudden, you were offered the opportunity to lead this athletic department. And you kind of hit the ground running, and we've experienced some great success under your leadership.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing that I share with you, I was 12 years a teacher, and then 20 years as a principal. I had the largest elementary schools in the state of Kansas, over 1,000 kids, 158 employees. And then when I was ready to retire from doing that, I was just going to get another principal's position, okay? And then Steve Minnis, that was early on in his presidency, came to me and he said, I want you to be the assistant athletic director, and I want you to take a look at student support services across the campus. I said, okay, and he said, you can still coach. And then when I did that, and then 3 months later, Richard Consom, who I just saw last Monday, a week ago at a funeral for Elmer Fangman, another great leader of this college, and happy that Elmer was in the leadership role so that we could be where we are today. So Richard told President Minnis, hey, I'm going to resign and take another position. And President Minnis called me in and he said, hey, guess what you're going to do? And I said, okay. I said, so we've had a lot of success, and as you know, I don't like to really be the boss, okay? In fact, I always remind all of our staff that you introduced me as Charlie Gartenmayer, the athletic director. We work together for the kids, and that's what my focus has always been on what's best for the kids. And but if you're doing stuff that's right for the kids and you can help them realize their God-given potential, I think they're all going to be fine. But one of my best or my greatest memories is when I'm at graduation and I watch kids walk across the stage and they get their degree. I say to myself, hey, myself and other people in the athletic department had a small part of that success. And like Eric Peterson talks about all the time, 4 for 40. So we're working with these kids for 4 years, maybe 4.5, but we're preparing them for the next 40 years of their life so that they can be successful. So,
well, thank you for taking the time, Charlie, and we know that you always are about helping all of us out throughout the time here, and this weekend we get to celebrate you, and so we're excited to have you on.
I appreciate that so much, and if there are Ravens out there that are in the local community, come on out. My gosh, we've got volleyball and soccer on Friday night. We've got football game, and don't sit home and watch the boob tube. Don't watch us only on streaming. Come out and watch some live events and get to know these great kids that we have here at Benedictine College. So.
Once again, that's been Charlie Gartenmayer. We'll be right back after this break to wrap up this latest edition of Greatness Unleashed and take a look at what we've got coming up specifically on this weekend's homecoming schedule.
Go tear this life apart, go find out where it starts, and do it all again until you find where it all begins. If you want to leave your mark, you gotta be the spark. Under the surface is the purpose you've been searching for. Open up the here and now, cast away your fear and doubt. Push and make it work, get what you deserve. Turn the volume up and live out loud. Open up the here and now, cast away your fear and doubt. Push and make it work, get what you deserve. Turn the volume up and live out loud. Laugh until it hurts, dance until it works, love until you learn to live out loud.
Welcome back to this latest edition of Greatness Unleashed as we wrap things up from this special homecoming edition here from the campus of Benedictine College. Josh Pound, glad to have you with us as we want to thank Coach Folsom, Coach Moody, and Coach Gartenmayer for stopping by the studio this week to chat about, basketball, about everything involved with being the leader of Raven Athletics with Coach Gartenmayer, and then about his special induction this weekend, which it's homecoming weekend, which means it's also Hall of Fame induction weekend, a slow week that builds up to a very busy Friday and Saturday. Coming up at home on Friday night, we've got men's and women's soccer as they will take on Grandview University at 5 and 7:30. Wedged between that is volleyball's first game of the weekend as they will host nationally ranked Missouri Baptist at 7 p.m. on Friday night. Then we'll get back to campus on Saturday with an 11 o'clock volleyball game as they will take on William Woods University. And then the football team, the number 3 ranked Ravens, as the poll came out just a few minutes ago, they will take on William Woods University as well, 1 p.m. here inside Larry Wilcox Stadium. We also want to give a shout out to cross country, who will be in action this weekend as well, as they will head to Ashland, Nebraska to compete in the Blazing Tiger NAIA Classic. That'll be their final regular season contests of the year until they get to the conference meet in a couple of weeks. So we're excited to see them and their season progress. So once again, for everyone here on the campus of Benedictine College, thanks to our guests here this week. Great job, as always, by Colin to help us out on that Raven Rewind, and Dakota and Cooper behind the scenes working the cameras and letting us know where we're at throughout the course of each segment of this week's episode. So we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks for watching the latest edition of Greatness Unleashed.